All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're talking about a recent headline involving TikTok. On the surface, it looks like a pretty standard business story, but we're going to look at it through a really unique ethical lens that shows what's actually happening when a company starts treating safety like it's optional. You know, this phrase right here, less context, less care, it hits the nail on the head. This is exactly what happens when you swap out nuanced human understanding for automation and outsourcing. It's pretty much inevitable. So the big question is, how did TikTok get here? Okay, so before we dive deep, let's get the basic facts on the table. What's the story that everyone saw in the news before we put on our ethical glasses to bring it all into focus? So here's the headline that dropped. TikTok is cutting almost 440 of its UK-based content moderation jobs. That work is now being handed over to AI and to teams overseas. Now, they're framing it as a simple restructuring, just an efficiency move. But this is where our real story, our deeper analysis truly begins. To really see what's going on past all that corporate jargon, we need a special tool, something that helps us find sharp, ethical insight. And today, we're going to use one. It's called the 6 Stages Framework, or the SSF lens for short. It's basically an analytical tool that helps us map out how organizations behave on an ethical level. It lets us take a single event, like these job cuts, and see the bigger pattern of issues behind it all, bringing a whole lot of clarity to a pretty messy situation. I love this analogy because it makes it so clear. We all get how regular glasses work, right? They correct your sight. They make blurry things sharp. Well, the SSF lens is like a pair of smart glasses that do the same thing, but for your insight. And this shows that it's an active tool, not just something you look through. It helps you interpret situations, it flags those ethical blind spots you might otherwise totally miss, and it forces you to question the assumptions everyone else takes for granted. It really guides your perception to a much, much deeper place. So let's do it. Let's put on our SSF smart glasses and take another look at this TikTok decision. It's time to see what's really driving this thing way beyond the surface level excuses. So the first thing the lens shows us is the ethical stage the company is operating from. And in this case, it's not great. TikTok lands at stage -2, resistance. What that means is, even though they talk about safety, their actual decisions are driven by things like cutting costs. Empathy is basically off the table, and safety gets treated more like a PR strategy than a core principle. The lens also helps us identify something called caves. It's just a term for those ethical blind spots. The self-serving rationalizations that are shaping this decision and basically keeping a potentially harmful system going. For TikTok, the analysis shows 3 of these caves are at play, 3 major blind spots that led them right to this decision. Let's break them down, because this is where the why behind it all gets incredibly clear. First up, we have the cave of efficiency. This is that classic rationale that puts speed, output, and lower costs above everything else. It's the kind of logic that says automating and outsourcing is better simply because it's cheaper and faster, while completely ignoring the absolute need for human care and judgment. The second cave is technology over humanity, and this one reveals a really dangerous belief that an AI can just replace a human moderator who understands trauma, culture, and context. It means trusting a system that literally cannot understand the emotional weight of racism, abuse, or a mental health crisis online. And finally, we get to the third and maybe the most critical blind spot, the cave of silence. Think about it. Who was missing from the conversation when this decision was made? The very users the platform says it wants to protect, young people, trauma survivors, and of course the moderators themselves. Their voices were completely silenced. Now, seeing these blind spots is one thing, but the SSF lens doesn't just give us a diagnosis. It also helps us ask better, sharper questions that show what's truly at stake here. It shifts our focus away from the simple what, the job cuts, and it forces us to confront the really revealing questions of why it's happening, who it impacts, and how that decision was made. These kinds of vision questions just cut right through the corporate speak that often hides the potential for harm. So let's ask the first one. Who benefits from this, and who is at risk? The answer immediately shows you how lopsided this is. The company benefits financially, while the vulnerable users and the moderators themselves, they're the ones who have to bear all the risk. And the next question, whose work is being seen as disposable? This really forces us to confront the value, or lack thereof, placed on the incredibly difficult and psychologically taxing job of content moderators. This decision basically says their expertise and their well-being are expendable. And this gets right to the heart of it. Whose safety is being treated as optional here? The analysis points to one very clear answer: the platform's most vulnerable users, especially young people. And finally, we have to challenge the whole premise of the technology itself. What assumptions are being made about AI being neutral? Is an algorithm really an unbiased, objective replacement for a human being? The lens tells us to question that assumption, and question it deeply. Okay, so now that we see the problem so clearly, the great thing about this SSF lens is that it doesn't just leave us there. It also points us toward a better path forward, a vision for what could actually be. You can see the stark contrast laid out right here. On the left, you've got resistance, which is TikTok's current reality, where cost-cutting is king and safety is kind of optional. But on the right, you see the possibility, reimagining. That's where you'd actually co-create safety rules with users and treat your moderator's well-being as absolutely essential. Ultimately, a higher stage equity-led approach starts from one simple idea. User safety is non-negotiable. It's the foundation. Everything else has to be built on top of that. And this idea applies way beyond just one app, right? It challenges us to think about how all of our digital spaces are designed and who they're really designed to protect. And that brings us to the final thought we want to leave you with. It's not just a summary, it's a challenge. If the leaders who made this decision were wearing their own SSF lenses and could see everything we've just uncovered, what do you think they might see now? And more importantly, what might they do differently?